Cool.
Hey, this is Coach's Chats podcast with Kieran. Today, I've got an awesome guest with me. I got Neil Kraft. Neil, give us a little background, what you're up to now, and what have you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, man. It's great to be here. Um, I am the head coach at Fairmont High School. I've got the boys team over there. Just finished my second season, and it's been a blessing. I mean, the support of the administration, the resources, the facilities, and most importantly, the young men. I'm just really grateful to have the opportunity to be a part of their lives, and yeah, it's great.
So I just finished season one. What was your biggest learning curve like when you went through season two? So for me, that's about to head into it. What was something that you felt like you did better, or maybe you learned from the first run through?
There's a lot. Definitely a lot of things to improve upon. I spent 4 years before coming to Fairmont at my alma mater, Dayton Christian.
Okay.
Two of which I was an assistant, and two of which I was the head coach. And that program was just in a different place. And I felt like we were blessed with different opportunities to have a couple successful runs, and I was given the program here and tried to take it here. With that being said, I think the Division III game is different than the Division I game in Ohio, and that's kind of, I think, displayed most often just in the sheer depth of players, obviously, but also the kind of physicality and athleticism piece that I've seen at the Division I level. So that was a pretty big learning curve or adjustment for me in year one. Some of the decisions I made, either personnel or prep, I hate to call it just conditioning, but kind of preparing to be fit is a nonstop process, and you don't have to get back into shape if you never let yourself get out of shape, sort of deal with us. But yeah, definitely spending more time in the weight room and making sure that we can compete physically, especially in the midfield, is probably the biggest lesson that we improved upon in year two.
And I know that your league is a tough league. You've got some stud programs in that mix, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of similarities, I think, between the GWalk and the GMC,
Yeah.
for sure. For us this year, with it being the COVID season, we elected to create a GWalk bubble, the powers it be,
Yeah.
and played everybody twice. And that's the first time that I had ever been a part of that setup. So yeah, there was no rest for the weary, for sure. But it added a little psychological component that was different than years past. Nobody really gets to scout each other,
Yeah.
because everybody plays Tuesday, Thursday. And preparing for round two, if you will, looks a lot different than when you haven't seen anybody the first time around. So yeah, but there's some great programs, very programs with rich history. You talk about Centerville and Beaver Creek are probably the most notable, but Northmont has multiple state titles. One thing I loved about Fairmont coming in was, despite maybe where the program was, there is a rich history there, and I kind of looked at it as like a sleeping giant. So I'm obviously thrilled to be blessed to have this position, but the likes of Chicago Fire and U.S. alumni Chris Rolfe, graduated about 20 years ago, and there have been some district championships and a Final Four run, in 2006. So it's important for me to instill in my young players who, are as young as 14 years old, that they're a part of a brotherhood that lasts a long time, and we want to make sure we carry ourselves with the right type of respect that would honor the guys that came before them.
And I know, and I think I asked about it because there was a tweet, and you always put hashtag, and I think it was like Team 60 or Team, was there like a number connected to it? So is that built into like the history of the program and how long it's been going?
Yeah. So we just, this past year was Team 48.
48.
And cliche, cheesy, I've heard it all before, but 1973 was the first year that Fairmont High School had a men's soccer team.
Okay.
And 2020 was obviously the 48th season there. So that was just a little way for the boys to see it daily and be reminded of, okay, I'm playing for, some guys who still care about the program, who graduated in, the 70s and the 80s. And in my first year, before we even had a game, our alumni turnout was unbelievable. And this is pre-COVID, but that was really cool to see. And we had a couple guys, still lacing up the boots that graduated in the 80s, which it was a lot of fun. So
I was going to say, what things have you done to try to reach out and connect with the alumni? Because that's something I'm looking to do with our program, as we've had some, we're kind of in the rebuild kind of process right now. But similar to your program, there's been some players that have come through that have been, talented, and so we've had some seasons where we've done really well. What things have you done? Beyond maybe just because everybody has like an alumni game,
mm-hmm.
but is there things that you guys have tried maybe beyond that have maybe had some success?
Yeah, well, the alumni game appeals to the 2016 grads.
Yeah,
who still have their knees and ankles.
Yes.
I feel like this is some area that maybe doesn't get attention right away when a new coaching staff comes in, but we are actually in the draft stages of preparing an alumni newsletter. So from everybody who came to the game and other contacts that we have, just try to build a little database and just give a recap, a couple times a year, highlights from the season, what the JV program did, how the varsity team fared in the regular season, the tournament, and then give them another update maybe going into the summer, talking about all the plans that we have in place to get the boys prepared for August 1 and beyond. I know that as an alumni of my high school and my college and club teams and other things that I was involved in, you share a really special bond. And I tell people all the time, like my top 5 memories of playing high school soccer, 4.5 of them had nothing to do with a soccer ball. And I know that I don't speak alone on that. So I definitely want to create an environment where, even the players that I have that go on and graduate, they're interested in hearing about, how their little brothers are doing and so forth.
And then I heard the word brotherhood. So is that something that's kind of that you've weaved into the program? And if so, how have you kind of built this environment of like a built-in brotherhood?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a no-brainer way to galvanize the soccer community within the city of Kettering and within the halls of Fairmont High School, to make sure that our young men and student athletes are proud of the crest that they wear. And like just about anything in life, whatever you put into it, you're going to see, what you're going to get out of it. So I think that there might have been a couple years, a period of time where that kind of attitude of self-respect and confidence and a sense of pride maybe was lacking. And it's, a lot easier to ask a young player to, do something that I know is going to be for their benefit, if they're bought in fully. And, that can be done in a lot of different ways. If it's quality time, one-on-ones, team meals, gear. Everybody loves gear.
They do.
One of my assistant coaches is kind of our video and social media coordinator, and he spends more of his time off the field than he does on the field. But I think that's important too. And I know that not everybody has those types of resources, but we're very blessed at Fairmont. So
I was going to say, I got to watch a number of your post-game little interview type things. Is that what the coach was doing? Was he the one that was doing those interviews, or is that a student-led thing? Or
yeah, so the coach was behind the camera and then would edit them, rapidly so that we could try to get those out. And it was a way to try to highlight certain individuals that either had a great week or a great performance that night. Again, that's kind of a simple way to galvanize our own soccer community, I think, that the boys have something they're really proud of. And it goes a long way. I mean, in year one, we started off on a pretty significant losing streak, and, typical Murphy's Law of series of events that have gone on. And, part of it, I think we had to burn a couple things down in order to build them back up properly, that in a way that we could sustain competitive success. But in the midst of that losing streak, I had a player who started on varsity, dropped down to JV, got pulled back up to varsity, came in the second half, and in the midst of like a 4-0 defeat, just a throttling, he was really, really bright. And, honoring him in a small way was then played on the Monday morning announcements, and his whole classroom is, clapping for him and stuff like that. And he later went on to be our captain this year as a senior. So, I think just trying to highlight our people that are so great is again kind of something that was a no-brainer for my staff.
right on. I think that's really, really, really cool, especially for a kid that had to deal with the struggle of like, hey, you're gonna have to go down just to get a little more playing time, maybe get your confidence up, and for him to come back, number one, and to in a 4-0 defeat, that's really easy to hold your head down. But it sounded like he just said, look, this is my opportunity to shine. Like, coach has given me another opportunity. And like you said, just to be recognized speaks volumes for him.
Yeah, I mean, it as a coach, it gives you goosebumps to have stories like that where, a kid gets hit with some adversity. They respond in the way that is obvious character has been built for that response to come into light. And then for him to continue on that trajectory and be a captain for us this year was something I'll never forget.
That's awesome. What things going through that losing streak, because we have some similar kind of streak this year as well, what things helped you guys continue to kind of work through that? Because it can be tough, I know. What things did you guys kind of like, is that where you had to lean on each other even more in terms of the brotherhood and the things off the field and say, look, the results will come, but these are some of the things we can control?
Yeah. We had a similar streak to start the year in 2019. And then this past year, we really bookended our season with a lot of success. But there in September, it got dark again. This year we had a couple different challenges, and it wasn't like it was just us. And I'm not even talking about COVID, but playing the GWalk schedule we did, we saw everybody twice.
Yeah.
And we played every Tuesday, Thursday. So it kind of gave us a curveball as to how we like to structure our weeks. We added in Sunday trainings this year about halfway through the season. And I think that was an opportunity for us to really, really compete and get after it physically, because I don't want that happening on Monday or Wednesday when you're trying to either prepare or recover and prepare on the same day. So that was tough. But as far as what we did, I've never been one to admit I know what I'm doing. And we completely flipped, not necessarily our game model, but our formation halfway through. And we went from a 3-5-2 to a 4-3-3, and all of a sudden, our possession numbers went through the roof. in most of our games. We still had some really tough opponents where we were kind of on the back foot, but that really helped. We started attacking more and creating more goal scoring opportunities, and so yeah, I'm always open to suggestions, whether it's from my staff or my players, and I think that's a great way to kind of earn their buy-in, is to let them have ownership of the team, because at the end of the day, they're going to be remembered, and I want it to be their team.
What conversation did you have that led you to say, you know what, this formation's not working? Was it just your staff, or was there some input from some of the players that were out there like, Coach, this isn't working right now?
I think that formation shift came from a couple of my assistants, and part of it was, we had a pretty impactful player who was a freshman this year, and I wasn't ready to give him the keys at starting center back in a 3-back formation on night one. And I thought that letting him get acclimated to a new pace at the varsity level. He's a big kid. He's 6'2", 165 as a freshman, but he's not used to getting hit all the time either. So I think once we saw that develop, we were able to kind of shift, one of our true midfielders, who was unquestionably the best athlete on the field, back into the midfield, and in that, he helped cover a lot of ground there as well. So
I think it's cool sometimes where the kids don't understand it as much. We talk about trust and all that kind of thing between players, but I don't think they understand kind of from your end to working with them, the ability, like you were just talking about, can I trust this 14-year-old to go out there against some grown men and handle it? So I think it was kind of cool that you guys, and it took some time, but I think it's cool too. And to recognize like who some of your stronger players are. Like we had that same thing where we had to have these 2 players in the mix at all times. It was pretty much like, hey, when we get it, the ball's got to play through player X every time, because he's going to make the right decision consistently.
Absolutely. I mean, and sometimes, I kind of look at every high school season as we want to put ourselves in a position to be healthy, humble, and hungry going into the tournament. And we want to be, you can call that, peaking at the right time or firing on all cylinders, you name it. But those 3 things I think are a must in order to be successful in the tournament. And in my time as a head coach and as a player, that's what it's all about, like surviving and advancing.
Yeah.
When you're kicking off under the lights, at that time of year is something really special, and it's a marathon to get there, and sometimes you have to move some puzzle pieces around throughout the regular season to arrive at that moment.
Yeah, right on. So now we've completed this crazy fall. What does Coach Kraft and his staff, what do you do now during this like upcoming spring? What's that look like for you guys?
Yeah, good question. I've kind of structured each of my off seasons a little bit different, just to keep things fresh and not get any kind of lull. I think it's important that my staff tries to get better as individuals, whether that's through continuing education or kind of reading different books and making sure that we are setting the example as to continuous improvement that we want out of our players. I think rest and time away from the field is super important. Kieran, I know that with what your thoughts were on the first high school season, it's a grind.
Yes.
And it is short and it is full. So, my wife and I usually plan a long weekend, first weekend of November / whenever we're out of the state tournament, to just go away and unwind. And I kind of want my players to do the same thing. I know that club usually starts the second you get done with high school, and whatever, we have to do what we have to do. But I don't, obviously there's a no contact period, and then there's very little contact, in December. I usually try to check in with the guys, obviously. But this year we divided all of our returning players into 3 pods, and each pod is given to one of the coaches on staff, and it gives my assistants a chance to kind of take ownership of a group. Each group we kind of divided by a number of different factors as to maybe it was age, maybe it was we want them to go through this material for their own benefit, or maybe it was a chance for a sophomore or junior to have a really significant impact on a freshman. And also to make sure we are in contact with every player, not just the ones that are vocal. And having, as a teacher, I'm sure you talk about a 12-to-1 student to teacher ratio rather than 36-to-1. It's just going to be more effective. So, we're reading books. We are discussing what we want our theme for the season to be. We are talking about what we're grateful for, and just trying to keep conversations going through brief Zoom check-ins and, a group chat kind of vibe. And then we'll start our futsal league here in January for returning players. We give them about 6 weeks where it's just the returning players to kind of reconnect, strengthen that bond that they already have, and make sure that their habits in the off season are ready to be seen as the example to current 8th graders, rising freshmen. So we'll play futsal a couple mornings a week. We'll play Sunday nights under the lights out on the turf, just completely open fields. And I encourage the kids that are playing club, to make sure that they're rested and doing that. And if they can stop by, great. And then we'll spend some time in the gym as well. Part of the reason behind the pod idea is also to kind of create groups of 4 within that 12 of guys to go get, kind of small group instruction once it gets a little warmer and once we're in a groove in the off season. So
I love that idea, because that's something I've been kind of toying with, is how can I take advantage of the small group training opportunity. And I love the idea of kind of taking the bigger and breaking it up into workable pods. And even just hearing pods makes me go back to the COVID days of having to split.
Well, and that's where we got the idea. It was, me and my assistants were like, we tried to find a silver lining through what we went through in the summer. And, it was an administrative nightmare, like just the sheer exhaustion, because it wasn't every day from August 1st. It was every day from June 1st. And we were all looking over our shoulder, making sure we were not going to get shut down and doing things the right way and we're safe. That I think some of the teaching might have gotten hampered in that process. So that's where the pods came from.
Yeah, I think it's and the idea of being purposeful about selecting your groups, so that, like you said, there may be a mentoring piece to an upcoming freshman, or just that, or someone needs to be challenged and pushed a little bit more, and now they're like, oh man, I'm in a group with blah blah blah, and what have you. And I think it's cool too, because I have 3 assistants in my staff, so I love the idea of kind of giving, because that's one of the things I learned was I can't do it all.
Yeah.
And I think we're all competitive. We all want to do well.
Yeah.
So it was hard at times to let things go, but your idea of taking a weekend off after, I literally, that 2 weeks after, I felt almost like a depression, I didn't have anything to do. And my brain was just stopped thinking. And I was moping around the house. My wife was getting ticked.
I've had very different exits from the state tournament. I've had 4 of them now, and each of them bring a different kind of pain. But I think after doing it for 4 years, I've gotten better at sort of compartmentalizing, you know, I hurt for my boys. I miss being around them every day, but I also know that I'm needed as the center point of my family, and I needed at my 9 to 5. And you know, it's an acquired skill, I would suppose. But
So when you're not coaching, what are you doing 9 to 5?
I am working at James Investment. We are a registered investment advisor in Xenia, Ohio, just east of Dayton. And I've maintained a role in the sales and marketing area for about 4 years, and then the most recent 4 years have kind of shifted to supporting our portfolio managers and maintaining kind of effective client relationships with those people, whether they're individuals, whether it's a couple, or corporations. So that's kind of my 9 to 5. I'm training to become a certified financial planner, which is my off-season replacement of soccer right now. So, but yeah, that's keeping me busy 9 to 5.
So is the UD flyer or flag behind you, is that where you went to college then?
I did my master's there and
Okay.
just graduated in April. And my wife went to undergrad there. She works there. Her parents went there. Her sister went there. So she's from Toledo, but they all kind of came down to UD. So, and I kind of grew up going to basketball games with my dad, and my mom is an alumni. So yeah, the Flyer faithful runs deep.
So are you a Fairmont grad?
No, I graduated from Dayton Christian High School.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
In 2009, and then went away to Grove City College, which is in Western Pennsylvania, and then came back to Dayton for this opportunity at James Investment, and wanted to get involved in coaching right away. So contacted the head coach at Dayton Christian at the time, and he brought me on board, and I assisted him for 3 years, and then eventually kind of took over for him when he needed to step down. So
that's awesome. So was coaching something that you've always kind of had in your mind, like this is something I'd love to do?
You know, it's like I thought about it when I was younger, but yeah, younger as in like high school age. But then, you know, I got busy with other things, and you know, academics and studying abroad and figuring out the job situation, and all of those things kind of had to, you know, be flushed out first. And then it kind of connected with my buddy who was the head coach, and I'm like, I think this feels about right. And you know, kind of thought about it and spent some time in prayer, and it felt like it was the right move to get involved at that school. So
that's awesome. And was that the coach that you first were with at Dayton Christian, was he like were you felt like a sponge when you just started there? Were you just kind of soaking it all in?
Yeah, it was a cool opportunity. His name is James Holliday, and he's one of the principals at Dayton Christian now, and that's why he needed to step down.
Okay.
But I played with him for 1 year in high school. So he's an 06 grad, I'm an 09 grad, and I was a little freshman sitting on the bench eating Skittles while he was scoring goals. So yeah, we kind of stayed in touch and then reconnected when I graduated, and it was awesome. But yeah, there's several coaches that played just a invaluable role in my development, and still to this day do. But yeah, a lot of just trying to absorb what works, what doesn't, and then kind of evaluating and filtering what I believe in and what makes sense to me, and trying to be, you know, myself first and foremost.
Yeah, that's been one of the experiences by just randomly doing these podcasts with coaches, is that just hearing some of the stories and some of the thought processes, and how coaches go about like self-evaluation and look at type things. You talked earlier about stats. So how do you guys keep stats? Is that I watch game film the next day and we break it down, or do you have certain things that someone on the bench is looking at that breaks it down?
Yeah, I've kind of struggled with this in the past, and I don't know if I've mastered it yet. Um, I think that statistics in a such a free flowing, fluid team sport like soccer is um, necessary. Whether it's trying to help a goal scorer get an opportunity to play at the next level, or a goalkeeper trying to earn all area accolades and things like that. Um, and I've had some assistants throughout my time that have valued it differently, and when we've looked at different things. Um, at Dayton Christian, a really important stat for us there was um, keeping track of won balls and lost balls, and then creating a percentage of how efficient are you, and that kind of you're going to see different clips at different positions. Whether you're a back, you can't be giving the ball away. If you're a forward, we want you taking your chances. We're not going to pay as much attention to that number. um, Obviously the game film is a no-brainer, and trying to make sure we deliver that efficiently to our team was challenging this year, because I like to be all of us piled in a classroom,
Yeah.
stopping it and
Mm-hmm.
Spending 40 minutes of our training session on 5 or 8 minutes of actual gameplay. But trying to get that out to our team this year was important. But the stats piece is what it is. We're not going to be psychoanalytical about it, but we do keep track of them.
I think it's because that big you'll keep hearing all the analytics say this and analytics say that, and so I'm always looking at what things could I be looking at that would be useful. And I think that's a great look at, like, hey, here's where we're being successful and not successful, and then the part of the field that it's occurring. So then it gives you an idea of like you said, if you're the right back or the left back, we can't we can't have a large percentage of our turnovers occurring there because it's right, it's right, it's transition right back to our goalie. Whereas you say if it's maybe in the attacking third, well then maybe we take a more risk there, and you're able to at least show the guys, like, literally, like, look, here's how many turnovers we had in these 3 spots, and these are 3 spots that it can occur or whatever.
Absolutely. And I don't know what I don't know, and try to stay humble in that way. If we had more time and there was more resources and I didn't have a 9 to 5, then I would probably dive right into that. But I know that it works for some people, and it can be a super beneficial tool in kind of creating success.
Yeah, because there's no, especially, well, just, yeah, because you're going from Tuesday game to Thursday. Wednesday, you're worried more about, let's recover. Let's just make sure, like, so and so's not feeling well, they can sit out. You're dealing with what the next challenge is. It's hard sometimes to peel from what the previous game was to help you with the next.
Absolutely.
Um, so in terms of where Neil Kraft might be in 5, 6, 7 years, are you thinking, is this high school your jam, or are there aspirations for bigger things, or maybe trying something different?
Um, I'm gonna cop out of that and say I'm gonna try to be where my feet are. Um, if you would have told me in the first week of our 2018 season at Dayton Christian that I was going to leave, I would have never believed you. Never believed you. I was so invested in those boys and that team, and I was in a position in my career that allowed me to continue coaching in the afternoons and evenings, and it was my alma mater. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what else am I looking for? But when that season concluded, I went on my trip with my wife. We came back and was contacted by Fairmont, and I was like, what's this about? And then again, sat on it for essentially a month before I said, yeah, let's chat. And that again was time spent in prayer and trying to evaluate what was best for me and my family and what made sense, and felt like, after all, it was the right move to make at that time. So I think based on that experience and previous lessons that I've learned away from the soccer field, I think it's just kind of foolish for me to imagine where I'm going to be 3 years from now. So I am 100% where my feet are right now, and am thinking about, oh, well, this class is going to be a freshman in 2023, and that gets me excited about what's happening at Fairmont, and that, really exhilarates me, and I hope that that's trickled down to my players as well. But yeah, we'll see where we go.
It sounds like, and this is something I'm working on, is patience. Like, just, things will kind of, like, even the opportunity to come to Fairmont in the first place just kind of came to fruition. It just kind of was there, and an opportunity for you. Like, I think you're of the understanding that, like, look, I'll just keep plugging away. I'm gonna do the best I can where I'm at. We're gonna try to make Fairmont as strong a program, and we'll keep building what we have here. And whatever happens, that'll be something that, like you said, it may take some time to think about, but until that point, I'm not going to start. I'm going to keep my focus where my focus needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, you win a lot of games, it's really easy to let your strong ego become a big ego. And that's a lesson that I've learned from Tim Kite in Columbus, that we want players and we want coaches to have a strong ego, but not a big ego. That means, self-confidence through the roof, humility, thinking of yourself less, not thinking less of yourself. But when we let wins and Instagram and stats kind of occupy our headspace, you lose your focus really easily, really quickly, and then you'll lose your shirt. So I think by just trying to be where your feet are, for me as the head coach, I try to say, well, I am the steward of this program right now, and it's my job to leave it whenever that time is in a better place than where I found it. Because if I don't think of myself as a steward, then my ego can go from being strong to big really quick.
The one thing too that I've heard throughout this conversation is that idea of, like, learning, like, being a leader is not something that just comes naturally for everybody. So I've heard you, like, with the Kite, with his podcast and the Focus 3 stuff, and talking about, like, your book study that you're going to have kind of in your pods, and just kind of reading things and teaching guys, like, hey, here's what the expectation, like you were talking about. We're going to look at our 9 through 12 right now and make sure they're doing the little things that we want our next group of freshmen coming in to see. And I think it's cool, like, even saying, like, I would like to have my coaches go out and read some books, or if they need to go take a coaching course or whatever. I think it's awesome for the kids to see that, look, man, I'm not settling. And like you said, I'm humble enough to say I have room to grow and improve. So I'm always willing to learn. I think that's sweet.
I appreciate that. I am, a functional soccer mind who is a soccer enthusiast. And I know what I do really well, and I don't want that to fall, by the wayside. I do know what I do well, but there's a ton of areas that I'm so grateful to have the assistance that I do, and want to continue adding assistance to where I see right now might be a couple weak spots. And then I want those assistants to continue with that same hunger and drive to learn and get better, because that's what we demand of our players. And again, to reference our friends from the Kite family, I think leaders create a culture that drive behaviors from the constituents or the players or the employees that are eventually going to lead to success. And that's why, throughout my 2 years at Fairmont specifically, we don't really talk about how many wins we're going to have as a goal. I was on a podcast with the superintendent back in February, very, very last free moments before COVID struck. And he asked what the goals are. And I said 100% academic eligibility, and then having a stronger commitment and a stronger connection amongst the players. And I think if you're connected and you're committed, then you're going to be dangerous, and those results will come. But like you mentioned, trying to be patient it's simple, but it's not easy. And we had 2 wins 2 years ago, and we had 6 wins this year, and I don't think that necessarily means we're just going to get 10 wins next year, but we want to try to be consistent, connected, and committed, and that will lead us in the right direction.
And do you think those key words, the consistency and what have you, that was one of the helping, like the results were kind of an offset of what you guys were doing internally as a group?
Yeah. Well, and
I know
it's
it helps
also
to have talent too. So having a talented like freshman walk in, like, well, and that your captain sounded like he may have had a wake up moment of, hey, I can make a difference and stuff like that.
Yeah, obviously talent is pretty necessary, but the other thing why I find it to be process goal oriented rather than results goal oriented is, why would you want to limit what those goals can be? And maybe they present themselves in ways that you hadn't imagined, and they're not better or worse, but they're just different. Seeing that captain in his junior year get knocked down and pull himself out of that hole and then elevate himself, that gets me pretty jazzed up as a coach. I think when we, in our first year, we said, okay, well, we want to win 4 games. That was like one of the in the first team meetings we had. Well, the team won 3 games the year before that, and we're like, well, somebody said let's just win 1 more. and I'm not here to bash on that kid, but we didn't win 4 games. We won less, but the one we won was against the team that was currently ranked number 1 in the city at the time. We were 1-9. They were 9-1. And it's a moment in a 1-0 victory that we still talk about today. And the hair on the back of your neck stands up. So that wasn't a part of our goals, but I'll take that moment over 3 extra wins over, whoever. So again, like that can be a little bit vague, but I think process-oriented goals sometimes aren't sexy and sometimes aren't something that comes to a high schooler's mind right away. But why limit what kind of success or goals you can achieve?
That's interesting because it makes me think about my assistant had a couple times during games where it was whatever, it was 2-0 and it was getting late in the second half, 15 minutes left. And he was like, hey, we need to start moving, like going more offensive, like it's going to attack. Cause he was like,
Yep.
At the end of the day, 2-0, 3-0, it doesn't matter. It's still a loss.
Are we here to lose cute or die trying, right?
Yeah. And I think that's what you're speaking to is like, well, we're going to give it everything we've got. So if we have to move guys forward and attack and it gives up a counterattack goal, and that is what it is. But he
Amen.
said, and it really resonated with me. And what just listening to you talk about it as to, I'm not like, we're not going to gain anything by walking off and it's 2-0 versus 4-0. We still lost. And at the end of it, like, we're not worried about that. We want to fix what we can fix and give our players an opportunity to maybe pull something back.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's also teaching a life lesson that's priceless and should be, it should go without saying, but to never ever give up. And you know, we're not a college football team vying for a spot to please the college football playoff committee. And if we lose 49-20, that's looked at differently than if you lose, 31-28. It's still a loss, and our boys will learn to never give up.
Yeah, right on. Man, the stuff you have shared has been awesome. It sounds like I would have to say Fairmont has soccer programs in really good hands.
Well, that's very flattering. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your time, Kieran, and I think it's really cool what you're doing here, and kind of really building a grassroots network of coaches. I know across the country, but especially here in Ohio, that it's a pretty remarkable network of people, and a lot more folks think the same way that we do than you would think. But yeah, I view you as a tremendous connector. And I was excited to see your beanie that you were going to feature here tonight. I mean, it's looking fresh. Love it.
I got a whole bunch for Christmas. My family hooked me up, and
Good.
I'm happy. So,
but yeah, no, I appreciate the time, man. This is really fun, and we can talk shop any day.
Neil, so if there's anybody out there that wants to get connect with you and maybe follow up, or just to even just follow and see how the Brotherhood of Fairmont soccer with team, I guess 49 next year comes up, what's the best way of connecting with you?
The Twitter handle for Fairmont is KFHS Men's Soccer. That's Kettering Fairmont High School Men's Soccer. And that's probably the best way to follow us. We're also on Instagram at Fairmont Men's Soccer. And, we're not obsessive with our content, but we try to get stuff out there to galvanize the next crop of young players that are currently living in Kettering. We want Kettering players to play for Fairmont and get them excited about it at a really young age. And I think the fruits of all of this labor is starting to pay off right now, and we've just got a tremendous group coming back. I think 15 returning players, which is exciting, and that doesn't necessarily translate to more wins, as we know, but it is really cool to see the core and the glue of that brotherhood come back for another year. So
we were just talking about the Kettering. Do they have multiple options as to high school options in the Kettering area?
No, just Fairmont.
Okay.
There's a couple of private schools in the area as well, but Fairmont's the only public school in Kettering.
Right on. Well, this has been awesome, Neil. I really appreciate it. This is Kieran Coach's Corner Podcast, and I'm out. Peace.